I got the email on a Tuesday, right before lunch. Subject line, Christmas Eve plans. My cursor hovered over it like it might detonate. I hadn't heard from my father in almost a year, unless you count the 15-second voicemail about selling mom's piano. No, how are you? No, let's talk. Just, gonna clear out the garage? The piano's going. Click. That was it. So when I saw his name in my inbox, Dad, new, because I'd deleted his contact months ago, I hesitated. I should have ignored it. Should have deleted it the way he deleted conversations, questions, entire holidays. But I clicked. Hi Marla, we're having a little thing on Christmas Eve if you want to come. Nothing big. Just dinner with family. Diane says it'd be nice to have you. Let me know. Dad. That was it. No apology for the absence. No acknowledgement of the hollow space Mom left behind when she died 3 Christmases ago. Just a little thing with family. That word rang in my ears like a bad joke. Because let's be honest, family didn't mean me. It meant Diane, his second wife, who moved in 6 months after Mom passed. It meant her daughter Amanda, the golden girl with the permanent tan and the Pinterest-perfect life. It meant Amanda's husband, who called me corporate Marla like it was a slur, and their 2 kids who probably thought I was some weird old cousin. But I stared at that email longer than I should have. I was 38, single, overworked, and too proud to admit I hated spending holidays alone. I had offers, colleagues, clients, even a neighbor who hosted a strays dinner, but none of them were home. And despite everything, some broken part of me still thought maybe this year would be different. Maybe he remembered. I closed the email, got up, microwaved leftover risotto and pretended it didn't taste like cardboard. But the invitation lingered, buzzing in the back of my skull like a mosquito I couldn't swat. The next night, I called him. He answered on the second ring. Marla? Like he didn't recognize the number. Like he hadn't stared at the same name in his inbox 2 days ago. Yeah, I got your email. A pause. Right. So? I'll come, I said, before I could stop myself. Another pause. Okay, good. Diane'll be glad. Not I'm glad. Not, it'll be nice to see you. Just, Diane. We hung up after 2 minutes and 12 seconds. He didn't ask about work. Didn't ask if I needed a place to stay. Didn't even mention Mom. Not once. I stared at the blank screen for a while after the call, listening to the silence swell around me in my apartment. Later, lying in bed, I thought about how cold that house used to be in winter. Not emotionally, at least not back then, but physically. Drafty windows, a furnace older than me, and Mom's stubborn refusal to turn the heat up past 68. She'd bake cinnamon rolls just to warm the kitchen. She'd layer us in sweaters and thick socks and make it feel like a game. That was before Diane brought in her scented candles and her energy-saving lectures and Amanda's kids who screamed if their tablets froze. Before my father shrank into someone I didn't recognize, a man who nodded through holidays like he was waiting for them to be over. I hadn't been back in 2 years. The last time was for Mom's memorial, and even then I slept in a hotel. But something about that email, it wasn't the words. It was what wasn't said. It was the nerve of him thinking I'd say no, and the bigger nerve of thinking I'd say yes and just pretend nothing happened. So I said yes. Not because I missed him, not because I believed anything had changed, but because loneliness is a shapeshifter. It doesn't always feel like sadness. Sometimes it feels like stubbornness, like needing to remind them you exist. And maybe, if I was honest with myself, it was about Mom. About the idea that if I didn't go, her memory would shrink even further in that house. The ornaments she collected, the recipes she wrote on index cards, the garland she hung over the fireplace every December, they'd all be smothered under Diane's plaid and silver catalog version of Christmas. I didn't want to be erased. So I packed a bag on the 23rd, took half a day off from the firm, told no one where I was going, not my assistant, not my friends, not even my doorman. I got in my car and started driving. 6 hours. That's how long it took to get from my apartment in San Francisco to the town I grew up in. 6 hours of rain-slicked roads, staticky radio, and rest-stop coffee. 6 hours to rehearse every version of what I'd say if things got awkward, or tense, or cruel. But by the time I pulled into the driveway, all that preparation melted into fog on the windshield. The porch light was on. The house looked smaller somehow, like grief had shrunken it. But it still had the same blue trim, the same uneven brick path to the door. I sat in the car for a full minute before getting out. Just breathing. Just existing. Then I grabbed my bag, locked the doors, and walked up the steps. The door opened before I knocked. Diane stood there in a red apron, mascara already smudging at the corners of her eyes, like she'd just come from a Hallmark commercial shoot. "Oh," she said, her voice half warm, half surprised. "You made it?" I nodded. "Yeah." Behind her, I saw Amanda holding a wine glass, wearing matching pajamas with her daughter. Laughter floated from the kitchen. Someone turned up Christmas music on the speakers. My father was nowhere in sight. "Well," Diane said, stepping back, come in, come in. We've got so much to do." And just like that, I was inside. Unseen. Unwanted. But very much there. Diane didn't take my coat. Just smiled with her teeth and stepped aside, like I was a guest showing up unannounced. The living room was full already. Warm bodies, sharp perfumes, the oversweet scent of cinnamon potpourri curling up from every surface. Christmas exploded in fake garlands and gold bows, but it wasn't ours. It was Diane's version of holiday cheer. Tidy, curated, emotionally antiseptic. "Put your things wherever," she said over her shoulder, already turning back to the kitchen. I still had my coat on, suitcase in one hand, laptop bag in the other. I stood in the entry like a service technician waiting for direction. Amanda was the first to acknowledge me. "Marla," she said, lifting her glass in a motion so smooth it bordered on mockery. "Surprised you could take time off work. Didn't think the big city ever stopped spinning." "Neither does time," I replied, setting my bag down slowly. "But I guess you don't notice that when you've never left the cul-de-sac." Her eyes flashed for a moment, just a flicker, then returned to that practiced, polished smile. She turned back to her husband, whispering something behind her glass. He laughed. I didn't catch the words, just the tone. I'd heard it before. The one reserved for difficult women. The kids, Amanda's too, were camped out on the couch, glassy-eyed and slack-jawed, watching Home Alone on a screen the size of a small movie theater. I wondered if they even knew who I was. No one introduced me. No one said, "This is your aunt." I was just a shadow moving through the periphery. My father finally emerged when the ham came out of the oven. I heard his voice before I saw him. Laughing, easy, comfortable. He came in from the back hallway in jeans and a reindeer sweater I'd never seen before. His hair was grayer than I remembered, but his posture was still tall, the kind of confident stance he used to have during open houses when he and Mom were still in the real estate game. He saw me and paused, just for a beat. Enough time for the flicker of something unreadable to cross his face. Not guilt, not happiness. More like recognition mixed with obligation. "Marla," he said, walking over with a nod, not a hug. "Glad you made it." I said I would. "Well," he said, glancing toward the kitchen, "Diane's been working hard on dinner. Should be a good one." Not, "I've missed you." Not, "How was the drive?" Just a redirect, away from anything real. Dinner was still an hour off. I wandered through the house like a stranger, noting the subtle ways things had changed. The photos on the wall were almost all new: Amanda's wedding, her kids' birthdays, Diane and my father on vacation in places I was never invited. The only photo of Mom I found was a framed wallet size, tucked behind a decorative angel on the hallway table, half obscured, easy to miss. My old room was locked. I tried the handle when no one was looking. Habit, more than hope. But it didn't budge. The door was painted over now. Same beige as the hallway, and a faint outline where the nameplate used to be was the only clue it had ever belonged to someone. I ended up back in the kitchen, the place where Mom used to hum while she basted the turkey or rolled out pie dough. Diane was stirring gravy like she was on a cooking show, narrating to no one, smiling to herself. "Oh, you're still up?" she said when she noticed me. "I thought maybe you'd gone to rest." "Rest where?" I asked, leaning against the fridge. "You didn't mention a room." She blinked, as if surprised I needed one. "Well, we had to make space. Amanda and Scott are in the guest room. The kids are in the office. It's a full house." "Right," I said slowly. "So?" Her smile tightened. "We set up the garage for you. There's a cot, plenty of blankets. It's not perfect, but it's private. We figured you wouldn't mind. You're so independent." The way she said independent made my teeth clench, like it was a flaw. Like choosing not to marry or pop out grandkids had made me less human, less deserving of a bed with sheets. I bit the inside of my cheek and nodded. "Sounds great." She seemed relieved I didn't push back. "Oh, good. I worried you might be, you know, sensitive." "About being treated like a guest in my own house?" I said with a raised eyebrow. Her smile faltered again, just for a moment. "Well, it's not really your house anymore, sweetie." That's when I saw it. She genuinely believed that. And maybe that was the moment it started. The turn. The silent fuse. Because I knew what she didn't. That Mom never removed me from the deed. That when she died, half the house came to me. Tenant in common, plain as day, locked in probate filings they never bothered to read. But I didn't say a word. I just smiled. Of course, I'm just here to enjoy the holiday. Later, after dinner, which was bland and beige and full of laughter I didn't share, I stepped out into the cold to find the garage. It was exactly what you'd expect. Concrete floor, the faint smell of gasoline, a space heater buzzing angrily in the corner. There was a folding cot with an army surplus blanket and a pillow that looked like it came from a deflated airplane seat. No insulation, no carpet. Just me and the spiders. They hadn't even cleared the shelves. Old paint cans, cracked tennis rackets, a rusted bike. I spotted a single framed picture in the corner, one of my old school photos, tucked behind a box labeled Xmas lights. Broken. I stood there in my coat, staring at the ceiling. I'd been invited, but I wasn't wanted. And yet, I was there. Not just in body, but in name. On paper. On the deed. Half owner of the very house I was being relegated to the garage of, and they had no idea. Not yet. There was a draft in the garage that whistled through the gap under the side door, sharp and biting like it had a grudge. I lay there on the cot, staring up at the ceiling where a single bulb buzzed like it was trying to hold on for dear life. The rafters were heavy with cobwebs and old insulation, gray tufts dangling like the ghosts of forgotten winters. I didn't sleep much that first night. The cot dipped in the middle like it had a vendetta, and every time I shifted, the metal legs creaked like they were ready to give up. I wrapped the army blanket around myself twice, but it wasn't enough. My breath came out in puffs. My phone said it was 34 degrees outside, and the garage wasn't much warmer. I kept thinking about what Diane said. "We figured you wouldn't mind. You're so independent." It played on a loop in my head, over and over, like a laugh track in a sitcom, where the joke is you. I'm independent, sure. I handle clients, closings, litigation battles that would make grown men cry. But independent didn't mean invisible. It didn't mean disposable. And it sure as hell didn't mean sleeping next to a gas can in the house I legally owned half of. By morning, I had a sore neck, chapped lips, and zero patience. But I pulled on my boots, brushed the ice off my coat, and walked back toward the house like nothing had happened. My fingers were so stiff I had to press them under my thighs at the kitchen table just to get the blood flowing again. "Morning," Diane chirped, flipping pancakes in an apron that said "Merry Everything." "Did you sleep okay?" I looked at her. Her hair was curled, makeup done. She smelled like vanilla and smugness. "Great," I lied. "Garage is charming, real rustic." Amanda walked in behind me in matching fleece pajamas, cradling a mug the size of her ego. "We were going to put you on the couch," she said, sitting down across from me. "But the kids wake up early and we didn't want you disturbed." "Thoughtful?" I said, reaching for the coffee pot. It was empty. Of course. Her husband, Scott, or maybe Steve, something with an S, was already on his tablet, scrolling through what I assumed were stock updates or fantasy football scores. He didn't even look up. My father came in a few minutes later, yawning and stretching like he'd just come back from a spa retreat. "Marla," he said with a nod, like he was checking off a name on a list. "Sleep okay?" I could have said so much. Could have reminded him that I grew up in that house, that my name was still on the property records because Mom never trusted Diane enough to revise her will. Could have asked him if he even remembered the last Christmas before she passed, when we sat by the fire drinking cider and listening to Nat King Cole on vinyl, how Mom made me promise to watch the house if anything ever happened. Instead, I said, slept like a rock. The rest of the day unfolded like a scripted sitcom. Amanda showed off photos from their trip to Hawaii. We found this adorable little local spot, I forget the name, but it was so authentic. Diane asked me if I was still single. "You're always working, sweetie. Don't you get lonely?" And my father offered nothing more than tired chuckles and passive nods. They had claimed the whole house. The living room had been rearranged. Mom's antique sideboard was gone, replaced with something sleek and Scandinavian. The fireplace mantel that used to hold her candle collection now displayed a digital photo frame full of Amanda's family portraits. Her kids' toys were scattered everywhere. Plastic dinosaurs under the tree. A scooter leaned up against the stairs. Even the hallway bathroom had been overtaken. Bath bombs, tiny socks drying on the radiator. Amanda's name etched into a towel hook with a Cricut label. It was like I'd stumbled into an Airbnb version of my childhood home. Familiar structure, completely foreign interior. I stayed out of the way most of the day, answered emails from a corner of the kitchen while Amanda's youngest screamed at an iPad. No one noticed. No one asked. That evening, room assignments were announced like we were checking into a hostel. Amanda's family had the guest room, of course. Her kids were in what used to be Dad's office. Diane's cousin was crashing on the downstairs pullout, and that left me with, well. Diane gestured toward the garage like she was doing me a favor. "I put some extra blankets in there," she said. "Oh, and I found a little lamp you can plug in. The overhead light's a bit harsh." I looked at her for a long beat. "You do know I'm a co-owner of this house, right?" The words came out before I could stop them. Her eyes flickered. She blinked once, then smiled again, tight and saccharine. "Oh, honey, that was so long ago. We just figured—" "You figured wrong," I said quietly. Amanda appeared behind her, holding a tub of tinsel. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," Diane said quickly. "Marla's just tired, long drive." And just like that, it was over. She moved on, humming to herself as she sprinkled fake snow on the banister. My father watched it all from his armchair, reading something on his phone. He didn't say a word. Back in the garage, I sat on the cot with the lamp Diane brought me, an old one with a frayed cord and a shade that tilted like it had given up trying. I pulled out my laptop and connected to the house Wi-Fi. The password was still Diane Rules 2018. Of course it was. I opened the deed, then the probate documents, then the final will. It was all still there. The clause naming me co-owner as tenant in common, the accounting of assets, the property appraisal Mom had done right before her surgery, just in case. They thought they'd pushed me out. They thought my silence meant surrender. But I wasn't here to play nice. I wasn't here to be grateful for a cot. I was here to watch, to count, to remember. Because when I made my move, I wanted it to be clean, sharp, legal. The kind of revenge that didn't end in shouting, but in escrow. Christmas Eve came dressed in the kind of quiet that only snow can bring. Thick, muffling, deceptively peaceful. I watched it fall through the garage's cracked window that morning, each flake landing like a question. I hadn't said a word to anyone since the night before. Not about the room, not about the documents, not about the truth they all pretended didn't exist. The house was buzzing by noon. Diane was in full general mode, issuing commands like a cruise director who mistook her own home for a five-star resort. Amanda helped in the way people help when they want praise without sweat, and the kids tore through wrapping paper early because they were too excited to wait. No one knocked on the garage door. No one asked if I needed a space heater or coffee or even breakfast. I showed up inside around 4, hair curled, makeup subtle but firm, wearing the same black dress I wore to Mom's funeral. Not one person commented on it. Amanda greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh good, you made it in. We were about to sit." I said nothing, just walked past her into the dining room that looked like a catalog spread. Long white table runner, silver chargers, crystal wine glasses so thin I was afraid to breathe near them. Diane had even put name cards at each seat like she was hosting the British royal family. Mine was at the very end of the table, not next to my father, not next to anyone, really. A full 2 seats away from Amanda and her husband, 3 from Diane, practically in another zip code. I took it without a word. Dinner began with clinking glasses and Diane offering a performative toast. To family, to love, to gathering around what matters most. Her voice wavered just enough to hint at sincerity, but I'd been a litigator too long not to hear the rehearsed cadence. Amanda sniffed loudly like the moment moved her. Scott, Steve, raised his wine and said, "Here's to finally doing this right." I forked a green bean, chewed it slowly, and said nothing. The food was fine. Not good. Just fine. Saltless roast chicken that looked better than it tasted. Mashed potatoes from a bag. Cranberry sauce from a can that hadn't even been sliced properly. Mom would have laughed, then remade everything from scratch with her bare hands. The conversation rolled on without me. They didn't notice. Or if they did, they didn't care. "Scott got a promotion last month," Amanda said, beaming. "Regional VP," he added, "running 2 branches now." My father leaned in. "That's great, son. Big raise, I hope." "Enough to finally upgrade the minivan," Amanda said, flashing a smile like she'd won the lottery. "He surprised me last week with the Pacifica. Heated seats, Apple CarPlay, all the bells and whistles." There were claps, laughter, even a "you deserve it" from Diane. Then Amanda turned toward me like someone had reminded her I was still present. "What about you, Marla? You still working those crazy hours?" I met her gaze, held it just long enough to be impolite. "I'm a partner now." The table went still for a beat. "At the firm," I added. "Evans, Langston, and Cho. Real estate litigation. Mostly high-value asset disputes." "Oh," Diane said, blinking. "That sounds stressful." "It's not bad," I said. cutting into the chicken. I deal with people who think they own things that they don't. It's fascinating what people believe about property law when they've never read a deed. My father coughed into his napkin. Amanda sipped her wine and said, "That must be a lot to juggle. No time for a husband or kids, I guess?" I smiled. Not all of us peak at 32 with a Chrysler Pacifica. That one landed. I saw it in the twitch at her jaw, the flush rising in her neck. But she laughed it off. Barely. "Marla's just teasing," Diane said quickly, shooting me a warning glance. She's always had a sharp tongue. The kind of tongue that had been silent too long. I watched the conversation drift back to safe topics. Holiday sales, kids' school awards, the sad little fake fireplace they'd installed in the den. No one asked me another question. No one noticed when I didn't speak for 20 minutes. But I watched. Every detail. I watched Amanda's kids pick at food they didn't like, while Diane cooed over their manners. I watched my father nod along like he hadn't handed the entire house over to strangers emotionally, if not legally. I watched Diane touch his arm every time Amanda spoke like she needed to remind him who the new alpha was. And I listened. Closely. They were talking about a refi. A second mortgage. Amanda mentioned pulling some equity to do a kitchen remodel in the spring. "We'll need to act fast before the rates tick up," she said. "I already have a broker on standby." "That's smart," Diane said. "Strike while the market's hot." My father nodded. "If we do it now, we might even lock in a better term." I didn't interrupt. I just filed it all away. Because none of them had a clue. You can't refinance a house when there's a Ellis pendants attached to it. You can't tap into equity when half of it belongs to someone else, especially someone who's already drafted a letter of demand and has the means to file a partition action. But I wasn't going to tell them that over chicken. Instead, I waited. I let dessert be served, store-bought cheesecake and whipped topping from a tub. Diane set it down in front of me like she was delivering communion. "I hope you like lemon," she said. "We didn't know what you'd want." That was the only acknowledgement I got. Not for the drive, not for showing up, not for surviving another year of erasure. When it was over, I helped clear the table. Amanda didn't. Diane said I didn't have to, but I did anyway. Quietly, deliberately. I rinsed every dish, one by one, watching the steam rise from the sink like a veil. They talked behind me, about what to stream, whether they should play a board game, who had the best leftovers to claim. I dried my hands, slipped out the side door, and walked back to the garage. The air had dropped below freezing. My breath came out in clouds. Inside, I shut the door, lit the small desk lamp, and opened my laptop. The draft demand letter sat there waiting. All I had to do was press send. But not tonight. Let them laugh in that house. Let them toast their minivan and mortgage plans. Let them enjoy the illusion. I had something better than a comeback. I had time. And the law. That night, the temperature dropped below freezing. In the garage, the space heater wheezed out its last gasp sometime around 2 a.m. I woke up to the sound of ice cracking in the corner near the water heater. A slow, rhythmic pop that echoed through the empty space like bones shifting in a crypt. My breath hung in the air in soft clouds, vanishing before I could catch it. I pulled the blanket tighter, tucked my hands between my thighs, and stared at the ceiling. Outside, wind scratched against the door like it was asking to be let in. I could hear the laughter from inside the house, muffled but real. Someone had found a bottle of wine. Amanda's voice rose in fake surprise. Diane's laugh followed, bright and shallow. And then my father chimed in with something low and warm. I couldn't make out the words, just the tone. Comfortable, familiar, belonging. I felt like I was listening to someone else's life, from the outside, in a garage that smelled faintly of gas and mildew. I rolled over and looked at my phone. It was 3:08 a.m. No new messages, no check-in, no, sorry we forgot to bring out an extra blanket. Nothing. The cold had seeped into the cot, into my back, into the place behind my ribs that once held warmth. I shifted, and the air mattress beneath me gave a slow hiss, deflating just enough to remind me it was temporary. Just like my presence. Just like their tolerance for me. I stared at the rafters above my head, their lines like veins in an old hand, and thought about the will. I remembered the day Mom signed it. I was still a junior associate, barely making rent, but she'd insisted on meeting with me. Not a partner, not an outside firm. She wanted me to draft it, said she trusted me. We sat at her kitchen table. She wore a red cardigan and reading glasses that kept slipping down her nose. The pen clicked in her hand like a nervous tick. Just make sure the house goes where it should, she said. You'll know what that means. And I did. I still do. She wasn't sentimental about the house. It wasn't about heirlooms or tradition. It was about what it represented. Safety, stability, something she'd built with her own 2 hands, one mortgage payment at a time. Something she didn't want erased by a second marriage and a woman with a Pinterest addiction. So she left me half. Clear as day. Tenant in common. Equal ownership. No survivorship clause. That house was mine as much as it was his. They didn't read the documents. Or if they did, they assumed I'd never act. They were wrong. At 4 a.m., I gave up on sleep. I dressed in layers. Sweater over t-shirt, coat zipped to the neck, 2 pairs of socks. I stepped outside into the crisp dark. The snow had stopped, but frost glittered across the driveway like a silent dare. I walked around to the back deck, careful not to slip. The windows glowed warm. Inside, my father and Diane slept in their room with the door cracked. Amanda's kids were splayed across the pull-out couch like dolls dropped mid-play. No one knew I was watching. No one knew what I was about to do. Back in the garage, I plugged in my laptop. The screen lit up like a promise. I opened the safe in my luggage. Small, steel, locked with a 4-digit code, and pulled out the documents. Certified copies, probate filings, the signed will, the original deed and its post-death transfer confirmation, everything I needed. By dawn, I was halfway down the interstate, the sun rising behind me in streaks of pink and rust. My hands were numb from the wheel, but my mind had never felt clearer. 6 hours back to San Francisco. 6 hours to shift gears from daughter to co-owner, from guest to litigant. When I got home, I didn't unpack. I didn't change. I walked straight to the wall safe in my closet and pulled out the original deed. Then I called my partner at the firm, Lauren Cho, a killer in heels with a mind like a bear trap. She picked up on the first ring. "You're up early," she said. "I need you to send a demand letter, real estate, partition." There was a pause. Then, "You serious?" "Very. Draft it today. File if they don't respond in 30 days. "Who's the respondent?" "My father." Another pause. "Okay," she said. No hesitation. Just business. "Want occupancy credits?" "Absolutely. For every month since Mom passed." "That's 3 years." "I know." "And you want the LI's pendants filed too?" "Yes," I said. "Cut off any chance of refinance. They're talking about tapping equity." Lauren gave a low whistle. Savage. I sat on the edge of the bed. My body was still thawing, but my resolve had gone arctic. "They left me in a freezing garage," I said. There was silence on the other end. Then, "Say no more. I'll send the draft for review by EOD." By 5 that afternoon, the letter was ready. 2. Richard Evans and Diane McAllister, R.E., Notice of Intent to Partition Real Property. 437 Hawthorne Avenue. Date, December 26th. From Evans, Langston & Cho, LLP. Dear Mr. Evans and Ms. McAllister, This correspondence serves as formal notice that my client, Marla Evans, as 50% co-owner of the real property located at 437 Hawthorne Avenue, the property, intends to seek partition by sale under California law if a buyout agreement at fair market value is not executed within 30 days of this notice. It went on from there. Firm, professional, cold. We included a deadline, January 25th. After that, I'd file the complaint, seek court-appointed sale, demand reimbursement for property taxes I'd covered after Mom died, demand credits for ouster and sole occupancy, demand control over the one thing they'd tried to make me forget I had a right to. They thought I'd sleep through the cold. They didn't know that ice doesn't break me. It hardens. The letter went out by FedEx the morning after I returned. Certified. Signature required. 1 copy to the house, 1 to Diane's business address, and a third emailed directly to my father. It was clean. Clinical. Like cutting a tumor out with a scalpel instead of fire. I didn't call to explain. Didn't warn them. I'd done enough explaining in that garage. Lauren forwarded me the tracking numbers. I watched them like a hawk. Signed R. Evans, 10:38 a.m., December 28th. Signed D. McAllister, 12:12 p.m., December 28th. No immediate replies. No, what the hell is this? No groveling calls. Just silence, which, frankly, was louder than a scream. On December 30th, the phone rang. I was at the office eating a cold lunch between depositions. The caller ID flashed Amanda Scott. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Hello? There was a second of silence, then a voice already mid-boil. What the hell did you send my mom? A legal notice. You sent it like some eviction letter to an elderly woman. She's not elderly, and she's not a tenant. She's a squatter on a co-owned property. You're sick, Amanda spat. You're seriously threatening legal action over what? A bad holiday? Because we didn't roll out the red carpet for your annual appearance? Read the deed, I said flatly. I'm not threatening anything. I'm enforcing. There was a sharp inhale on the other end, the kind people make when they've just found out they were standing on a cliff. My mom's crying, she said. Dad's furious. You're breaking this family. I didn't break anything, I said. I'm just done pretending it wasn't already broken. I hung up. No follow-up, no apology, just dead air. 3 days later, Diane responded. Not to me, but through a lawyer. A hastily typed email from some local estate attorney in Santa Rosa. He used words like misunderstanding, familial intentions, emotionally charged environment, and then tried to pivot to amicable resolution. He asked me to withdraw the demand while we explore options. I didn't reply. Instead, I told Lauren to finalize the complaint. File it. January 3rd, 9 a.m. Sharp, our firm filed the partition action in Sonoma County Superior Court. Within the hour, the LIS pendants was recorded and indexed, attached directly to the property. That meant the house couldn't be sold, refinanced, transferred, or leveraged in any legal way until the court resolved the issue. Every mortgage broker and title company in the county would see it. That was the line in the sand. They couldn't ignore me anymore. That afternoon, Lauren looped me into a call with our real estate litigator, Dean Ryerson. Old school guy. Wore bow ties and carried a leather briefcase like it was 1994. But sharp. Razor sharp. This is going to go one of two ways, Dean said. Either they cooperate and negotiate a buyout, or we let the court appoint a referee, list the property, sell it, and divide the proceeds. I want credits, I said, for taxes, insurance, and ouster. You'll get 'em, Dean replied. You have the receipts? All of them, from the day Mom passed. That's 3 years of mortgage coverage, Lauren added, half of which she paid solo. Dean chuckled. Oof. Yeah, they're gonna wish they'd kept the thermostat on. We ended the call with a game plan. If they responded with a reasonable offer, we'd settle. If not, we'd drag them through discovery, accounting, and trial. Slowly. Publicly. The court date came through 2 weeks later. Preliminary hearing scheduled for March. Just enough time for their panic to set in. And it did. I knew because, for the first time in years, my father called. He didn't leave a message. Just rang once, twice, and hung up. I didn't call back. Diane emailed. Her tone had shifted. Less frosty, more pleading. She suggested a sit-down at a neutral location to discuss alternatives. I forwarded it to Lauren with one line. Decline. Amanda texted. Just 3 words. You'll regret this. I laughed when I saw it. Because regret is what you feel when you did something wrong. What I felt was justice sharpening its edge. At night, I sat by the fireplace in my apartment with a glass of wine and my mother's photo on the mantel. She looked the same as she always had. Soft hair, tired eyes, a smile with sadness tucked in the corners. I didn't forget you, I told her. They tried to. The house wasn't about square footage or inheritance. It was about history. The decades she spent inside those walls, raising a child and a marriage and a garden. The holidays she made work even when money didn't. The life she built that they steamrolled like it never existed. They thought the silence was weakness. But silence is just the space before the verdict. And now, the judge would see the whole picture. The day the lawsuit became real was a Thursday. Rain fell in a cold, steady curtain outside the courthouse. I parked 2 blocks away and walked the distance under a black umbrella, heels tapping against the slick concrete. The file in my hand weighed more than paper. It was years of silence, smothered grief, and denial finally put into motion. Inside, the clerk barely glanced at me. She took the folder, date-stamped the top sheet, scanned it into the system, and slid the receipt back across the glass divider. "Anything else?" she asked, voice flat. "No," I said. "That's all." That was all. But it was also everything. The partition complaint was filed. My father, Diane, and Amanda were now listed as parties in a civil matter, official respondents in a lawsuit over co-owned real property. The Ellis pendants had already been recorded, but now there was an active case tied to it. Public record, searchable, permanent. I stepped back out into the rain and stood for a moment under the courthouse awning. Something inside me felt still, not satisfied, not triumphant, just still, like a pond after a stone has sunk all the way to the bottom. By the time I returned to the office, Lauren had already heard back from Diane's attorney. Email came in at 10:22, she said, not even looking up from her laptop. They're pissed. Good, I said. They're also dumb, she added. They want to settle informally. No valuation, no accounting, just an offer. $70,000, paid in installments, in exchange for a full quitclaim. I laughed. 70? Total. They think I'll give up half the house for 70 grand? Yup. Tell them no, and tell them the offer goes down for every week they waste time. Already did, she said, tapping the keyboard. Also, Amanda's husband called the office, left a voicemail trying to talk reason. He thinks you're blowing things out of proportion. Did he mention the garage? He mentioned you skipping the line of civility. I smirked. Send him the photos. Lauren's eyes finally flicked up, curious. Photos? I pulled them up on my phone. The ones I took that last night. Breath fogging, mattress sagging, frost gathering along the garage window. One of the cot with the warped frame. One of the bowl I'd set under a leak in the roof to catch melting ice. Add them to the exhibit list, I said. Oh, Lauren whispered, grinning. They're gonna love the judge. 3 days later, Diane's lawyer tried again, this time with attitude. A formal letter arrived, 4 pages of flowery language, claiming holiday crowding, emotional stress, and confusion around ownership. He offered a mutual dissolution of claims in exchange for an amicable family resolution. I sent it straight to Dean. He called me from the parking lot of his golf course, voice dry. He actually wrote amicable family resolution in the same paragraph as you lacked standing? Yep. Dean laughed so hard I thought he'd drop the phone. Oh, we're keeping that. We're framing that. We moving forward with the motion for referee appointment? Already on it, he said. Judge'll eat this up. And just FYI, your dad's lawyer finally filed an opposition. It's weak. They're just trying to stall. What grounds? They claim you're acting out of spite, that the house is a multi-generational residence, and that forced sale would cause irreparable disruption to minor children. The kids don't even live there, I said. Correct. But the courts have seen worse logic. Doesn't matter. We've got the deed, the tax records, and the photos. And... He paused. The original probate order with your mother's explicit intention that you retain co-ownership. I exhaled. Then we push. Hard, he said. Let's bury them in facts. That weekend, I visited the house. Not inside. Just drove by. Hawthorne Avenue was quiet, the way it always was after the holidays. A single string of lights still hung limp across the porch. A blow-up Santa lay deflated in the yard. The shutters needed paint. Diane's silver SUV sat in the driveway next to Amanda's new minivan. Everything looked exactly the same, but it wasn't. Because now, every decision they made, every repair, every renovation, every credit pulled, would pass through a legal minefield of their own making. I wasn't just a memory now, I was on record. I left a copy of the filed complaint in the mailbox. Not required. Just poetic. Let them see the ink. Let them feel the paper. Let them know that their names were now stamped in a matter that would follow them through courtrooms and credit checks. Later that week, I walked into a team meeting at the firm like nothing had happened. A junior associate was nervously presenting a zoning dispute. My phone buzzed quietly in my coat pocket. Diane. I didn't check the message. Didn't open the voicemail. Whatever she had to say now belonged to Discovery. After the meeting, Lauren found me in the break room. Want to hear something funny? Always? Amanda posted a photo on Facebook this morning. Caption says, "Being tested only makes us stronger." I snorted into my coffee. So it begins. Because that's what happens when you call people out in public. They either apologize or perform. But me? I wasn't performing. I was building my case. Courtroom 3B was packed that morning. It wasn't a full trial, just a preliminary hearing on the partition action. But somehow, Diane, Amanda, and my father had all shown up, flanked by their attorney, a man who looked like a rotisserie chicken in an ill-fitting suit. Greasy smile, too much cologne. He kept wiping his glasses on his tie. I came alone. Well, me, Dean, and a file folder thick enough to crush a mouse. Marla, Diane said when I walked in, her voice low but sharp. You really want to air all this in front of a judge? I didn't answer. I just looked at her. Looked through her. Past the makeup, past the brittle smile, past the cardigan and cross necklace, and decades of passive aggression. Amanda didn't look at me at all. Her arms were crossed, knuckles white. Her husband, Scott, I finally remembered, sat beside her, red-faced and whispering aggressively into her ear like they were plotting to sue Santa Claus. My father didn't speak, didn't look at me, not once. The hearing began promptly at 9 a.m. Judge Lourdes Wexler, stern, late 50s, hair pulled tight like she didn't have time for nonsense, presided. I liked her immediately. Dean opened smoothly, explained the partition request, The legal standing, the evidence of co-ownership. He handed over the deed, the probate order, the tax records I'd kept meticulously for 3 years. He slid photos across the table. Me in the garage, frost on the window, the sagging cot, the cracked roofline. Judge Wexler studied them one by one. "These were taken during a holiday visit?" she asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Dean said. Ms. Evans was relegated to an unheated garage despite being a 50% owner of the property. Opposing counsel stood. He was sweating. "Your Honor, we contest the characterization of events. The garage was a temporary solution due to crowding. It was the holidays. Emotions were high." "Holiday crowding doesn't negate property rights," Dean replied. Judge Wexler held up one photo, the one with the visible breath in the air. "This is from December 24? "Yes." "Temperature was below freezing that night," she said. "I remember because my own pipes nearly burst." Opposing counsel cleared his throat. "It wasn't ideal, Your Honor, but the house was full of children, family. These arrangements were made with good intentions." I wanted to laugh. Dean didn't even blink. Ms. Evans requested no more than her legal right to fair use or compensation. Instead, she was excluded, literally and financially. The other parties refinanced the property twice, failed to include her in disbursements, and denied her occupancy. She's entitled not only to her share of the property, but also reimbursement for ouster, taxes paid, and rental value. Judge Wexler leaned back. "Has the property been appraised?" "No, Your Honor," Dean said. "Respondents have resisted access." "We didn't resist," Diane blurted, standing up. "We just didn't want strangers in our home." Judge Wexler raised an eyebrow. "Your home?" Diane's mouth opened, then shut. Amanda whispered something into their lawyer's ear. He stood again, desperate. "Your Honor, this is a family matter. Surely there's a less drastic remedy than forcing sale of a family home." Dean leaned forward. "It's a legal matter, Your Honor, and we are seeking a remedy under the law." The judge nodded once. Then she looked at me directly. "Ms. Evans, is it your intention to remain on title, or are you seeking liquidation?" I stood. "Liquidation, Your Honor. I've offered a fair buyout. It was declined. I'm requesting a partition by sale and a full accounting." She tapped her pen on the bench. "Then here's what we'll do," she said. "The court will appoint a referee to evaluate the property and manage sale under partition authority. All parties are to cooperate. Proceeds will be held in escrow, pending full accounting of taxes paid, improvements made, and fair market rental value for exclusive occupancy." She looked at Diane, then Amanda, then back at me. "You're a co-owner," she said. "They can't pretend otherwise." She banged the gavel. Hearing adjourned. Outside the courtroom, Diane made one last attempt. "Marla," she said, blocking my path as I walked to the elevator. "Please, this is your family." Amanda hovered behind her, face like stone. My father stayed back. Still no eye contact. "I begged your father not to do this," Diane continued. We thought you were busy. You never came around. You didn't seem like you wanted..." "Wanted what?" I asked. "A folding chair in the garage while you redecorated with my half of the equity? That's not fair." "No," I said, stepping around her. "It's legal." I didn't wait for the elevator. I took the stairs 2 at a time. By the time I got back to the office, Dean had already begun the process of referee appointment. We had a list of qualified real estate professionals on standby, neutral parties vetted by the court, all with experience handling contentious family partitions. "They'll hate this," Dean said, sliding the papers across my desk. "Total transparency, forced cooperation, real accounting." "Good," I said. "Let them hate it." Lauren came in a moment later, waving her phone. "Oh, and heads up, Amanda just posted a selfie. #WhenSnakesStrike with a picture of her looking sad on the courthouse steps." I smirked. They're welcome to cry into escrow. She laughed, but I didn't, because it wasn't funny. Not really. It was tragic. All of it. That it had come to this. That they'd pushed me this far and still thought they were the victims. But I wasn't sad anymore, I was clear. And now, the sale was inevitable. No more whispers, no more pretending, just property, paper, and justice. The referee's name was Jocelyn Kim, mid-40s, no nonsense, with a posture like a steel beam and a voice that could cut through drywall. She'd handled dozens of family partitions before, and when Dean sent her the file, she called me the same day. "Tell me what I'm walking into," she said. "House built in 1979. 4-bed, 3-bath, Hawthorne Avenue, probate split. I own half. The other half thinks they own all of it." She chuckled softly. "That's common. I want a clean sale, full transparency, court-approved accounting. They'll drag their feet. And you? I've got boots on." Jocelyn scheduled the inspection for the following Tuesday. Under court order, they had no choice but to let her in. Amanda tried to cancel at the last minute, citing a school emergency. Jocelyn reminded her that interfering with a referee's access could result in contempt. Suddenly, the emergency vanished. The inspection went forward. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. Jocelyn took hundreds of photos, walked every inch, noted every crack, every questionable improvement Diane had made without permits. The kitchen island had been replaced with a DIY butcher block that bowed in the middle. The garage door had duct tape on the inside, and one of the bathrooms, once renovated by my mother with antique fixtures, had been painted bubblegum pink and stuffed with plastic decals of inspirational quotes. Jocelyn sent me a message that night. "This house has been emotionally over-leveraged and physically neglected. But it'll sell." She listed it within the week. $889,000, court-ordered partition sale, co-owners in dispute, sold as is. The moment it hit the MLS, the calls came in. Investors, cash buyers, young families priced out of the San Francisco madness. They didn't care about the drama. They saw square footage and opportunity. Amanda lost it. She emailed Jocelyn 10 times in 3 days, demanding the listing be taken down, insisting they weren't ready, that the holidays had clouded their judgment, that surely there was still a path to mediation. Jocelyn copied the judge on her reply. The listing stayed. By the second weekend, they held an open house. Diane tried to stage it, bake cookies, light candles, play soft jazz, but Jocelyn shut it down. "Neutral condition," she said. "You're not marketing a lifestyle, you're selling an asset." More than 40 people came through. 16 left feedback, 5 submitted offers. An all-cash buyer closed in 32 days, $902,000 clean, no contingencies. At the escrow meeting, we sat in separate rooms. I could hear Diane's voice through the wall, tight, trembling. Amanda was louder, demanding, accusing, Scott pacing. My father still silent. Jocelyn sat with me and slid the distribution breakdown across the table. Total: $902,000 mortgage payoff, $184,000 referee and legal fees, $31,000 remaining, $687,000. Marla Evans, co-owner, 50%, $343,500 plus reimbursement, property taxes, insurance, ouster credits, $62,200 total disbursement to Marla Evans, $405,700. No one argued, not a single objection. They knew better. The rest? Divided among them. What was left after years of pretending I didn't exist. The escrow officer handed me the check. I signed the acknowledgement, shook Jocelyn's hand, and walked out without a backward glance. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for a moment and let the weight of it all settle. The sale was done. The house, the one they tried to erase me from, tried to own outright through sheer gall and gaslighting, was gone. Not to them. Not to me. To the open market. To fairness. To the law. Back at my apartment, I laid the check on the table and stared at it. Not the number, but what it meant. Not revenge, not money. A line in history that couldn't be rewritten by Christmas cards and casseroles. A reminder. Silence doesn't equal surrender. I scanned a copy, filed it in my records, then lit a small candle next to Mom's photo. Her smile was soft, familiar, real. They didn't get to erase you, I whispered. Then I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and started searching for homes. Not investments, not family legacies, just one house. For me, with stubborn light, and a fig tree. I drove past the old house once, not out of sentimentality, not to gloat, just to see. It was late March, almost 3 months to the day since the escrow closed. The air had the strange warmth of a California spring, sunlight tugging at the edges of winter, birds just beginning to test the branches. I didn't stop the car, didn't slow down too much, just cruised by at the posted limit, windows down, radio low. The porch had been painted, a soft, calming blue. The brittle shutters Diane always claimed she'd replace were now a clean white, freshly mounted. A new mailbox stood at the curb. Modern. Sleek. The lawn was tidy. No tacky wind chimes, no dying inflatable Santas, no faded plastic playsets choking the grass. Just a little girl on the driveway, chalking a comet across the concrete with deliberate strokes. I almost smiled. It was a house again. Not a battleground. Not a pawn. Not a monument to erasure and dysfunction. Just a home. For someone else. Exactly as it should be. I turned the corner and didn't look back. Later that week, I signed papers on a new place of my own. 2-bedroom cottage outside Healdsburg. Nothing dramatic. No ocean view. No imported tile or heated floors. Just clean lines, thick walls, and a fig tree in the yard that reached toward the morning sun like it remembered where it came from. The sellers were an older couple downsizing to an RV and the open road. We met at the walkthrough. The wife, June, handed me a potted rosemary plant. Said it liked the back steps in the morning. "We raised 2 kids here," she told me, touching the doorframe gently. "But the house is ready for a different story." I didn't cry, but I did breathe deeper than I had in months. Moving day came fast. No fanfare, no forced family dinners, no watching people pretend they didn't know what they'd done. Just boxes, books, and a French press. My law degree leaned in the corner of the second bedroom, waiting for a frame. My mother's records, Nat King Cole, Nina Simone, Joni Mitchell, rested in milk crates next to a new turntable. I unpacked slowly, deliberately. I didn't need to rush. That first night, I sat on the back step with the rosemary plant beside me and a blanket over my knees. I watched the moon rise through the leaves of the fig tree, each branch like a line in some old poem I hadn't read in years. No one knew where I was. No one needed to. Diane never emailed again. Amanda posted less. Their lawyer filed a motion to close the case once all funds were distributed and records finalized. We didn't object. Dean and Lauren wrapped everything up like they were sealing a letter. I sent them both wine and thank you cards. The check I'd received now sat partly invested, partly saved. Some went into the new house. The rest waited. For nothing in particular. I didn't need to spend it all. The victory wasn't the money. It was the silence. The kind that comes after the storm. Not absence, but peace. I visited Mom's grave the week after the case closed, left a single sunflower, told her about the porch, the paint, the chalk comet, told her I kept the promise. "They didn't get to erase you," I said. And they didn't. Because erasure only works when no one fights back. When you let the revisionist historians rewrite your chapters while you're still alive. But I remembered. And I used the law. Not for vengeance, not for spectacle, but for what it was built to do. balance the scale. I think that's the part no one expected. Not the lawsuit, not the hearing, not even the sale. They expected fury, emotion. That I'd shout or threaten or show up sobbing in the driveway. But I didn't. I went quiet. Then I went legal. Then I went home. A home I chose. A home with light. A home that holds nothing but forward motion. If there's anything I'd say to someone standing on the edge of their own garage night, cold, silent, invisible, it's this: you are not powerless, even if they treat you like a guest in your own story, even if they rewrite the will in their heads and tell you it was always meant to end this way, even if they laugh while you freeze. You can still act. You can still fight. You can still own the ending.